What if I told you that some of today's most successful entrepreneurs were once sleeping in their cars, living paycheck to paycheck, or even homeless? That the very struggles that seemed to destroy them actually became the foundation of their million-dollar empires? Today, I'm sharing 3 incredible stories of entrepreneurs who went from rock bottom to building businesses worth millions. These aren't just feel-good stories. They're real examples of how adversity can become your greatest advantage. By the end of this video, you'll understand the exact mindset shifts and strategies these entrepreneurs use to transform their lives. More importantly, you'll see how their darkest moments became their greatest sources of strength and motivation. The first story might shock you. It's about a woman who was evicted from her apartment with her young daughter, had her car repossessed, and was rejected by 12 different publishers. Today, she's worth over $1 billion and her name is recognized worldwide. But before we dive in, here's what makes these stories so powerful. None of these entrepreneurs had special advantages, trust funds, or famous connections. They had something much more valuable: the refusal to give up when everything seemed impossible. Let's start with Joanne Rowling, better known as J.K. Rowling, the creator of Harry Potter. But her journey to becoming one of the world's most successful authors started in the darkest period of her life. In 1993, Rowling was a single mother living in Edinburgh, Scotland. She had just gone through a difficult divorce, was unemployed, and was struggling with severe depression. She was living on government welfare, receiving just £70 per week to support herself and her infant daughter, Jessica. Rowling was essentially homeless, moving between friends' apartments and small cold flats that she could barely afford. She would often take Jessica to local cafes because they were warmer than her apartment, and she couldn't afford to heat her home properly. It was during this period of desperation that Rowling began writing the story that would change her life. She wrote the first Harry Potter book on an old manual typewriter, often working in cafes, while Jessica slept in her stroller beside her. The writing process took 5 years. 5 years of poverty, rejection, and uncertainty. During this time, Rowling faced eviction notices, had her electricity cut off multiple times, and sometimes couldn't afford to buy food for both herself and her daughter. But she never stopped writing. Even when she felt like giving up, even when friends and family suggested she get a real job, Rowling continued to believe in her story. She later said that this period of struggle taught her that rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. When Rowling finally finished her manuscript in 1995, she faced another crushing challenge: finding someone who would publish it. She submitted her Harry Potter manuscript to 12 different publishers, and all 12 rejected it. The rejections were brutal. Publishers told her that children's books didn't sell, that the story was too long, that fantasy wasn't popular. One publisher even told her to get a day job because she would never make money from children's books. Rowling was devastated. She had spent years perfecting this story, pouring her heart and soul into every page, only to be told repeatedly that it wasn't good enough. Many people would have given up at this point, but Rowling refused to let go of her dream. Finally, in 1996, a small London publisher called Bloomsbury agreed to publish Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, but even then, they only printed 1,000 copies and told Rowling not to expect much success. They even suggested she use her initials instead of her full name, because boys wouldn't read books written by women. The advance she received was just £2,500, barely enough to survive on for a few months. But Rowling didn't care about the money. She was just grateful that someone believed in her story enough to publish it. What happened next changed not just Rowling's life, but the entire publishing industry. Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, selling over 500 million copies worldwide. The series has been translated into 80 languages and turned into a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Today, J.K. Rowling is worth over $1 billion, making her one of the wealthiest authors in history. But she never forgot where she came from, or the struggles that shaped her success. The story takes us to Brooklyn, New York, in the 1950s, where Howard Schultz was growing up in public housing projects. His family was so poor that they couldn't afford health insurance. And when his father broke his leg and couldn't work, the family had no income and no support. Schultz watched his father struggle with the shame of not being able to provide for his family. This experience planted a seed in young Howard's mind. He promised himself that if he ever built a company, he would treat his employees with dignity and and provide them with benefits that his father never had. After high school, Schultz became the first person in his family to attend college. He worked multiple jobs to pay his way through Northern Michigan University, including selling his blood to make extra money for textbooks and meals. After graduation, Schultz worked various sales jobs, but he was always searching for something more meaningful. In 1981, he discovered a small coffee roasting company in Seattle called Starbucks. At the time, it had just 4 stores and sold only coffee beans and equipment, not brewed coffee. Schultz fell in love with the coffee culture he experienced during a trip to Italy, where he saw how coffee shops served as community gathering places. He had a vision of bringing this Italian cafe experience to America, but when he pitched the idea to Starbucks owners, they rejected it completely. The owners told Schultz they were coffee roasters, not restaurateurs. They had no interest in serving brewed coffee or creating a cafe atmosphere. Frustrated but not defeated, Schultz made a decision that would change his life forever. He would start his own company. In 1985, Schultz left his comfortable job at Starbucks to start his own coffee company called Il Giornale. But starting a business with no personal wealth and no connections proved incredibly difficult. Schultz needed to raise capital to open his first store, so he spent months pitching his idea to potential investors. He was rejected 217 times. Investors told him that Americans would never pay premium prices for coffee, that the idea of a third place between home and work was ridiculous, and that coffee was just a commodity. The rejections were personal and painful. Schultz later recalled, "I heard no so many times that I began to doubt whether I had a viable idea." He was running out of savings, and his wife was pregnant with their first child. The pressure to give up and find a stable job was enormous, but Schultz refused to abandon his vision. He kept refining his pitch, learning from each rejection, and searching for investors who could see what he saw. Finally, after months of rejections, he managed to raise $1.25 million from a small group of investors who believed in his dream. Il Giornale opened its first store in 1986, and despite early challenges, it began to gain traction. Customers loved the Italian cafe experience, and word began to spread. Just 2 years later, in 1987, the original Starbucks owners decided to sell their company, and Schultz seized the opportunity to buy it. He merged Il Giornale with Starbucks, keeping the Starbucks name, and began expanding rapidly. But Schultz never forgot his father's struggles or his promise to treat employees well. He became the first company in America to offer comprehensive health insurance and stock options to part-time employees. Today, Starbucks has over 35,000 stores worldwide and generates over $32 billion in annual revenue. Howard Schultz's net worth exceeds $4 billion, but he's most proud of the fact that Starbucks has provided healthcare and benefits to hundreds of thousands of employees who might not have had them otherwise. Our final story is perhaps the most remarkable transformation of all. Oprah Winfrey was born into extreme poverty in rural Mississippi in 1954. Her childhood was marked by abuse, neglect, and circumstances that would have broken most people. Oprah was born to unmarried teenage parents and spent her early years living with her grandmother on a farm with no indoor plumbing. She wore dresses made from potato sacks and was often mocked by other children for her poverty. At age 6, Oprah moved to Milwaukee to live with her mother, who worked as a housemaid. This is where her life took a devastating turn. From ages 9 to 13, Oprah was sexually abused by family members and family friends. She felt powerless, ashamed, and completely alone. The abuse led to rebellious behavior. Oprah began acting out, skipping school, and getting into trouble. At 13, she ran away from home. At 14, she became pregnant but lost the baby shortly after birth. She was sent to live with her father in Nashville, Tennessee. Her father, Vernon Winfrey, provided the structure and discipline that Oprah desperately needed. He emphasized education and held her to high standards. For the first time in her life, Oprah felt safe and supported. Despite her traumatic past, Oprah excelled in school. She was an honor student, won a scholarship to Tennessee State University, and began working in radio while still a teenager. Her natural talent for connecting with people was immediately apparent. But even as her career began to take off, Oprah carried deep emotional scars from her childhood. She struggled with self-worth, weight issues, and the fear that people would reject her if they knew the truth about her past. In 1976, Oprah moved to Baltimore to co-anchor the evening news, but she struggled in the role. She was told she was too emotional and too invested in the stories she covered. Her bosses wanted her to be more detached and professional, but that wasn't who Oprah was. After being demoted from the evening news, Oprah was assigned to co-host a morning talk show called People Are Talking. This is where she found her true calling. The format allowed her to be herself, empathetic, curious, and emotionally connected to her guests and audience. In 1984, Oprah moved to Chicago to host a struggling morning show called AM Chicago. The show was in last place in the ratings, competing against the established Phil Donahue show. Industry experts predicted that Oprah would fail in the competitive Chicago market. But Oprah brought something different to television. She shared her own struggles and vulnerabilities with her audience. She talked openly about her weight struggles, her difficult childhood, and her personal challenges. This authenticity created a deep connection with viewers. Within months, AM Chicago became the top-rated talk show in Chicago. The show was renamed The Oprah Winfrey Show and was syndicated nationally in 1986. It became the highest-rated television program of its kind and ran for 25 years. But Oprah's success wasn't just about television ratings. She used her platform to address important social issues, promote literacy, and inspire people to overcome their own challenges. She turned her painful past into a source of strength and compassion that helped millions of people. Oprah also built a media empire that includes television networks, magazines, and production companies. She became the first African-American woman billionaire and one of the most influential people in the world. What do these three incredible success stories have in common? When we analyze the journeys of J.K. Rowling, Howard Schultz, and Oprah Winfrey, we can identify specific traits and strategies that turned their struggles into success. First, they all developed an unshakable belief in their vision, even when everyone else doubted them. Rowling believed in Harry Potter despite 12 rejections. Schultz believed in the coffee shop concept despite 217 investor rejections. Oprah believed in authentic, empathetic television despite being told she was too emotional. Second, they transformed their pain into purpose. Rowling's depression and struggle as a single mother informed the themes of loss and resilience in Harry Potter. Schultz's father's lack of benefits inspired Starbucks' exceptional employee treatment. Oprah's traumatic childhood became the foundation for her empathetic approach to helping others. Third, they all refused to let circumstances define their future. They came from poverty, abuse, and rejection, but they didn't use these as excuses. Instead, they used them as motivation to create something better. Fourth, they were willing to take massive risks when others played it safe. Rowling spent 5 years writing with no guarantee of success. Schultz left a comfortable job to start his own company. Oprah left Baltimore to take on Phil Donahue in Chicago. Finally, they all maintained a long-term perspective. They didn't expect overnight success, and they didn't give up when faced with temporary setbacks. They understood that building something meaningful takes time, persistence, and the ability to keep going when things get tough. The success of these entrepreneurs wasn't just about their circumstances or luck. It was about fundamental shifts in how they thought about failure, rejection, and adversity. Understanding these mindset shifts can help anyone facing challenges in their own life or business. The first mindset shift is viewing failure as feedback, not finality. When Rowling was rejected by publishers, she didn't see it as proof that her book was worthless. She saw it as information about what publishers were looking for and how she might need to adjust her approach. The second shift is understanding that your current situation is not your permanent situation. All three of these entrepreneurs were able to see beyond their immediate circumstances. When Oprah was struggling in Baltimore, she didn't accept that as her ceiling. When Schultz was facing his 200th rejection, he didn't conclude that his idea was impossible. The third shift is recognizing that your struggles are preparing you for your success. Rowling's experience with depression gave her insight into the emotional depth that made Harry Potter so compelling. Schultz's father's struggles with employment gave him the empathy to create better working conditions at Starbucks. The fourth shift is focusing on serving others, rather than just personal gain. All three entrepreneurs built their success around making other people's lives better. Rowling wanted to give children the magic and escape she wished she'd had. Schultz wanted to give employees the dignity and benefits his father never received. Oprah wanted to help people heal and grow from their own struggles. The final shift is developing patience with the process while maintaining urgency with action. They all understood that meaningful success takes time, but they never used that as an excuse to delay taking action. They worked consistently toward their goals, even when progress seemed slow. So how can you apply these lessons to your own life and goals? Whether you're starting a business, pursuing a creative dream, or trying to overcome personal challenges, these strategies can guide your journey. First, identify your non-negotiable vision. What is the one thing you believe in so strongly that you're willing to face rejection, criticism, and setbacks to achieve it? This vision needs to be bigger than your comfort zone, and more important than other people's opinions. Second, reframe your struggles as qualifications, not disqualifications. Instead of hiding your challenges or seeing them as weaknesses, ask yourself how they've prepared you to serve others who face similar struggles. Your pain can become your purpose if you're willing to transform it. Third, develop a rejection strategy. Rowling faced 12 rejections. Schultz faced 217. Rejection is not a sign that you should quit. It's a sign that you're putting yourself out there and taking risks. Create a plan for how you'll handle and learn from rejection before it happens. Fourth, focus on progress, not perfection. Rowling didn't wait until she had the perfect manuscript before submitting it. Schultz didn't wait until he had the perfect business plan before seeking investors. They took action with what they had and improved along the way. Fifth, build a support system that believes in your vision. All three entrepreneurs had people who encouraged them during their darkest moments. Surround yourself with people who see your potential, not just your current circumstances. Finally, commit to consistent action over time. Success isn't about making one perfect decision. It's about making good decisions consistently over months and years. Small, consistent actions compound into extraordinary results. These stories aren't just historical examples. They're blueprints for success that are even more relevant in today's world. The internet and modern technology have created more opportunities than ever for people to overcome circumstances and build successful businesses and careers. Today's entrepreneurs have advantages that Rowling, Schultz, and Oprah didn't have. You can start a business with minimal capital, reach a global audience from your laptop, and test ideas quickly and cheaply. Social media allows you to build an audience and community around your vision before you even have a product. But the fundamental principles remain the same. Success still requires believing in your vision when others don't, transforming challenges into strengths, and persisting through rejection and setbacks. Consider modern entrepreneurs who have applied these same principles. Sarah Blakely cut up pantyhose in her apartment and faced rejection from manufacturer after manufacturer before building Spanx into a billion-dollar company. Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia were so broke they sold cereal boxes to fund Airbnb, which is now worth over $100 billion. The key is understanding that your current circumstances, no matter how difficult, are not your permanent destiny. Every successful entrepreneur has a story of struggle, rejection, and moments when giving up seemed like the only logical choice. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't talent, connections, or luck. It's the decision to keep going when everything seems impossible, to learn from every setback, and to maintain faith in your vision, even when you're the only one who believes in it. Your struggles are not obstacles to your success. They are the raw materials from which your success will be built. As we wrap up these incredible stories, remember that every person who has achieved extraordinary success started exactly where you are right now, with a dream, challenges to overcome, and the choice between giving up or keeping going. J.K. Rowling went from welfare to billionaire by refusing to let rejection define her worth. Howard Schultz went from housing projects to building a global empire by turning his father's struggles into his company's strengths. Oprah Winfrey went from abuse and poverty to becoming one of the most influential people in the world by transforming her pain into purpose. These aren't superhuman people with special powers. They are ordinary individuals who made extraordinary choices in the face of overwhelming odds. They chose to believe in their vision when it seemed impossible. They chose to see opportunity where others saw only obstacles. They chose to persist when quitting would have been easier. The most powerful lesson from these stories is this: your current chapter is not your final chapter. No matter what you're facing right now, financial struggles, rejections, setbacks, your success might be hiding behind the next rejection. Your greatest strength might be developing from your current struggle. The question isn't whether you have what it takes to succeed. The question is whether you're willing to keep going long enough to find out. Because if these three entrepreneurs have taught us anything, it's that the only way to guarantee failure is to stop trying. Your story of success is waiting to be written. The only question is, Are you ready to write it?